can think of several things. First, if the student hasn't had experience taking an online class, I would strongly recommend and indeed encourage them to attend an orientation session before you begin your class. They're available for free on campus and at remote sites throughout our community college district. Second thing I would recommend is that you feel comfortable with the understanding that an online class requires more work than a traditional face-to-face class. And that is not intuitively obvious for most students. So prepare to spend more time rather than less time by taking an online class. The other side of that coin, however, is that it offers you tremendous flexibility so that you can log in and complete your work at about any time during the day. So there's good and bad. But those would be the recommendations to someone taking an online class for the first time.
You really need to be motivated. That's the first thing. Students get it in their mind that an online class means that you don't have to meet deadlines and you don't have to go to class, so it's going to be really easy. But in fact, the opposite is really true. You're right, you don't have to go to class, but that means that you are now more responsible for learning the material on your own than you would be if you went to class and you could have discussion with other students and meet with a teacher. And in some online classes, and I don't know, how your instructor is going to offer this course, but in my class, I do have deadlines. And the reason that I have deadlines is because if I don't have deadlines, the majority of my students will procrastinate. And then at the very end, they'll try to turn stuff in, and it's not good quality, and they don't end up doing very well. If you're in a course where the teacher doesn't set deadlines, then you need to set deadlines for yourself. Because again, waiting till the last minute to do all of the work is not really conducive to learning, and you're probably not going to get a very good grade.
Sure that they understand what is required of them. It depends on the instructor as to what they're going to be doing. So it could be online things that they'll be doing. It could be lab things that they're doing. It could be a project that they have to develop. So they need to know up front what's required of them. For example, if it's a reduced seat time course that requires a lot of internet time, it's probably not going to be a good choice for someone who absolutely hates being online. I mean, you have to at least like being online in order to succeed, I think, because you'll be online.
I think that they should keep in mind that most of the assessment occurs through writing, since there are no in-class discussions per se. So students that have more confidence in their writing are likely to do better, and they're likely to do more writing than they would in a regular classroom. They also have to be highly disciplined, because there's not going to be the peer group that they see every other day that reminds them when things are due. And so they have to be highly organized in that way. I would look to make sure that they had addressed the question appropriately, that they, in effect, answer the question specifically as it's asked, and that they include some kind of evidence for whatever their response is, whether it be from the text or from their experience.
What makes a successful online student, they have to be very self-motivated. They have to be very disciplined. You're not in the classroom every other day like you are in a traditional classroom. It's all online, and you get the similar stuff, but it's a different medium. So you have to be very self-disciplined. You have to be a very active learner, and what I mean by that is normally in the classroom you can sit there and listen to the instructor, and the instructor will ask questions. There's 35 people in there, and if you don't want to answer, you kind of sit back and hide. In the online environment, at least in my classes, every person has to respond to a question in every chapter and reply to at least one other person in the classroom. So every student is having discussions and involved in this discussion. So you have to be very active in the online environment. It's not something that you sit back and just read. So if I was going to say the most important things, I'd say self-motivated, very disciplined, and be ready to be an active learner in the classroom. Those are the three key things.
Probably the most important thing, and the thing that causes students a lot of problems, is perseverance. You have to be rather self-disciplined. If you don't have that kind of self-discipline, you need to develop that kind of self-discipline. That kind of discipline means that you're going to do the work now instead of doing it later, instead of putting it off. Procrastination is going to be the student's worst enemy. Really, worst thing you can do. Try to be the student that gets it done first, not the student that gets it done just as it's due. The other thing I'd encourage you to do is be well organized. A lot of times students have trouble with organization with an online class. They forget exactly how to handle things. You really handle things the same way you do in any other class. I'd encourage you, if you're reading large amounts of material online, to print it out, and then you can highlight it and make notes and do the same kinds of things you would do when you're normally reading something. Try to treat it like a normal class, but be sure you don't let it get away from you. As you're using Webboard, be sure you take care to use the feature that allows you to mark off the things you've already responded to, the things you've already read, so that you don't, every time you go in, have this huge number of messages and not know which ones you need to look at and which ones you don't.